For all the talk Meryl Streep receives as the most Oscar-nominated actor of all time, it's important to remember that also makes her a gigantic loser at the Oscars too. Think of it. Between 1984 and 2010, Streep was an Academy Award nominee a whopping 12 times. 12 frickin' times without ever taking the gold trophy. Based on her reactions in all those videos, she takes the losses in stride. She's always smiling and gracious, even leaping to her feet and cheering in 1988 when her friend Cher won the Best Actress trophy for Moonstruck. But by the early 2010s, let's be honest, it had to have been getting old for Streep to keep hearing her name called on Oscar nominations morning and then always going home empty-handed the night of the ceremony. I mean, sometimes she had no chance in hell, and I'm sure Streep knew it. I'm thinking her nominations for like One True Thing and Music of the Heart. She had a slim outside shot for adaptation in the Best Supporting Actress category after she won the Golden Globe, but no, that was Catherine Zeta-Jones's year for Chicago. She got kind of close for Doubt after taking the SAG Award for Best Actress, and if Kate Winslet hadn't been so grossly overdue, Streep would have won her third Academy Award in 2009, and if Julia Child had been the main focus of Nora Ephron's Julie and Julia and hadn't taken up just half of the narrative, I do think Streep could have beaten Sandra Bullock for Best Actress a year later. For nearly 3 decades, there was always something, some reason why Streep would come in second or third place, forcing her to smile and clap from her seat while someone else walked up to the podium. It is hard to win a third Academy Award for acting. Only a select few have done it, like Frances McDormand, Daniel Day-Lewis, and Jack Nicholson. Katharine Hepburn still holds the record of most acting Oscar wins with 4, but considering how astonishing Meryl Streep's performances were well past Sophie's Choice, by the 2010s, she was now the overdue actor. She was just too good not to have won a third Oscar by then. All Streep needed was the right project at the right time, and a nomination in a category that didn't already have a frontrunner. Well, after a 2-year break following her 1-2 punch in 2009 of Julie and Julia and It's Complicated, Streep returned with an Oscar bait movie if there ever was one, playing a controversial real-life figure in a sprawling biopic that featured at times heavy makeup and prosthetics. In the weeks leading up to the Iron Lady's release at the tail end of 2011, I felt it, and I'm sure you did too. Meryl Streep was coming for her third Academy Award. She was no longer messing around. She had taken on a project that had little chance of making much money or receiving Oscar nominations in other top categories. The Iron Lady seemed to be developed, shot, and promoted as a showy acting vehicle for Streep, her Best Actress nomination pretty much certain before cameras even started rolling. As long as the movie wasn't awful and the Best Actress lineup wasn't stacked with stiff competition, things were looking very good for Streep going into the 2012 award season. But not so fast. This is Meryl Streep we're talking about, and every Oscar race after Sophie's Choice in 1983 has come with some struggle in the face of other nominees. Yes, even the year of the Iron Lady wasn't going to be a cakewalk for Streep, because as we got closer to the 84th Academy Awards on February 26, 2012, Streep's chances at a win finally, after 29 long years, looked like they were going to be thwarted yet again by one of her past co-stars. When Streep won her Best Actress prize at SAG for Doubt in 2009, she shouted out love to Philip Seymour Hoffman, of course, and Amy Adams too, and then she said this.
The gigantically gifted Viola Davis. My God, somebody give her a movie!
Well, it looks like someone listened to Meryl Streep because Viola Davis did indeed get a starring role in a movie a couple years later with her leading performance in The Help as maid Aibileen Clark. The film was a hit with critics and audiences that summer, and going into the fall and winter, Davis remained at the top of Best Actress prediction lists, her emotionally devastating turn in Tate Taylor's drama a great one, and wouldn't you know it, on Oscar nominations morning, 2 of the 5 people to show up in Best Actress were Meryl Streep for The Iron Lady and Viola Davis for The Help. A few years prior, Streep and Davis were acting the hell out of one of Doubt's most crucial scenes, and now they were up against each other in a category that at first looked like it was headed in Streep's direction after she won the Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in a Motion Picture Drama. But then award season started to get interesting when Viola Davis won Best Actress, first at the Critics' Choice Awards and second at the Screen Actors Guild Awards. The momentum for Streep had started to fade, and yet again, for the umpteenth time, it looked like she was going to lose the Oscar. It looked like Viola Davis was going to become only the second woman of color in history, after Halle Berry, to take the Best Actress trophy. But Streep had won the Golden Globe and BAFTA too. The race was very close, Finally, the suspense came to an end when Colin Firth, the previous year's Best Actor winner for The King's Speech, opened the envelope and said this.
And the Oscar goes to Meryl Streep, the Iron Lady.
What a huge thrill it was to see Meryl Streep finally receive her third Academy Award, her first win in my lifetime, her speech a wonderful all-timer. But as I've mentioned, Streep's third victory wasn't guaranteed, Viola Davis breathing down her neck almost that entire award season. Why did Davis come so frickin' close to winning her first Oscar in 2012? And what are the many reasons why Meryl Streep was ultimately triumphant after nearly 3 decades? Hi, I'm Brian Rowe. This is the Awards Contender, and in today's video we're talking the Best Actress race of 2012 and why Meryl Streep defeated Viola Davis at the 84th Academy Awards. Before we get to the nominees, let's talk about the ceremony itself. Billy Crystal returned as Oscars host for the 9th and to date final time, the standing ovation he received the year before clearly having a positive effect on him. However, his opening monologue seemed rushed somehow, his song covering 9 nominated films for Best Picture only lasting 4 minutes, but it was still great to see him host again, and shouldn't we get him back soon for a 10th hosting job? Let's make it a clean 10. 2 films took most of the technical awards, the first being Hugo, Martin Scorsese's brilliant and innovative film he purposely made for kids. He used 3D for the first time, and this was a breathtaking film to see on the big screen. It won 5 Oscars total, including Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography, and Best Visual Effects. The other film that was victorious and lots of technical prizes was the big winner that year, The Artist, the French comedy drama made in the style of old-school black and white silent cinema, starring Jean Dujardin and Bérénice Bejo. The film takes place in Hollywood between 1927 and 1932, focusing on a relationship between a young starlet and an older star as silent movies are replaced by the talkies. Premiering at the 2011 Cannes Film Festival, it received immediate raves from critics and audiences, and the Weinstein Company bought the distribution rights, giving it a limited release in the United States in November. And despite The Artist being an unusual Oscar contender in the face of many more high-profile end-of-the-year dramas, it simply became the movie that could, grossing more than $40 million nationwide and receiving lots of nominations at the precursor ceremonies. It won 3 prizes at the Golden Globes, including Best Motion Picture Comedy or Musical, and Jean Dujardin won Best Actor at the Golden Globes, SAG, and BAFTA. As I talk about a lot on this channel, the disgraced Harvey Weinstein likely played a big role behind the scenes in getting this movie in front of enough eyeballs, especially awards voters. By Oscar nominations morning, there was no avoiding the incredible momentum of this relatively small movie when it received an astonishing 10 nominations, including Original Screenplay, Supporting Actress, Actor, Director, and Picture. And on the night of the 84th Academy Awards, the film did extremely well, winning 5 prizes total: Costume Design, Original Score, Actor, Director, and Picture. As great as so many movies were in 2011, and trust me, I have a long list, the only consensus choice everybody liked or loved and didn't have any issues with was the one that managed the top 3 wins of the night. For Best Picture, the only film I think that could have beaten The Artist is The Help, given it took Best Ensemble at SAG, but it only received 4 Oscar nods total. It didn't even get into adapted screenplay, so yeah, The Artist pretty much had that win in the bag. You could also argue Hugo, since it won so many technical awards, celebrated the history of movies, and received 11 Oscar nominations, one more than The Artist. But too many Academy members probably looked at Hugo as a special effects movie for kids, and The Artist could be their movie that celebrates movies of 2011. In Best Actor, Jean Dujardin also didn't have to fight too hard for that Oscar win, given that, as I said, he mostly swept the season, only George Clooney giving him a fight for The Descendants after he won Best Actor in a Drama at the Golden Globes and Best Actor at Critics' Choice. Pretty much every category at the Oscars that year was a foregone conclusion, very few surprises throughout the ceremony, and if it weren't for the one category we're going to talk about in a moment, there really wouldn't have been a video to make about the 84th Academy Awards. Christopher Plummer was the obvious winner for Best Supporting Actor for Beginners, nobody in the category giving him any competition. At the age of 82, Plummer became the oldest person ever at the time to win an acting Oscar, a distinction he held until the then 83-year-old Anthony Hopkins won Best Actor for The Father in 2021. And Octavia Spencer was also a foregone conclusion in the Best Supporting Actress category, Spencer sweeping the season for her wonderful performance in The Help. Nobody else in her category had a shot here either, although I frickin' love that nomination for Melissa McCarthy in Bridesmaids. The more comedic performances nominated for Oscars, the better, I say. Oh, and one more quick thing. When presenting the Best Foreign Language Film category, Sandra Bullock spoke some German. You're welcome.
Egal welche Sprache sie sind Filme ein gemeinsames Erlebnis, das uns alle verbindet. Sie sprechen über die allgemeine Humanität in uns allen.
Alright, that takes us to Best Actress, really the only category at this Academy Awards ceremony that came with some suspense. Who was going to win, Meryl Streep or Viola Davis? Was Streep finally going to win her third gold trophy, or was Davis going to come from behind and take the prize instead? Before we get to Meryl versus Viola, let's talk a little bit about the other three nominees. The person in the category that had zero chance in a win gave one of my personal favorite performances of the year easily, Rooney Mara and David Fincher's The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. Based on the runaway best-selling novel and starring Daniel Craig, this meticulous mystery drama tells of a journalist who searches for a missing woman with help from a young computer hacker named Lisbeth Salander.
I guess I must have alarmed you turning up like that.
If you touch me, I'll more than alarm you.
That won't be necessary.
After Fincher's The Social Network enjoyed a remarkable award season, getting close to Best Picture and Best Director victories at the Oscars, the director's immediate follow-up was one of the most highly anticipated films of the year. Everybody had an opinion on the casting of Salander, and Rooney Mara was a very unlikely choice. Her scenes in The Social Network are terrific, but was she going to be able to play this role successfully? I never doubted her for a second. I had been in awe of her talent for a couple years by then, as when I worked in casting in Los Angeles in 2009, Rooney Mara auditioned for one of the films I was working on, and she blew everyone in the room away, including myself. Mara's time was coming, she just needed a great role to show the world what she was made of, and Lisbeth Salander was the role that did it. Sadly, the film underperformed with critics, at the box office, and throughout award season. Mara only showed up at the Golden Globes before being passed over at Critics' Choice, SAG, and BAFTA. Her making the Best Actress Final Five at the Oscars over Tilda Swinton for We Need to Talk About Kevin, I would argue was a surprise, but a fantastic surprise nonetheless. Something that helped, I think, was that The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo got more awards momentum in those last few weeks of the season. The film recognized WGA, DGA, and PGA, and it got 5 Oscar nods total, not too shabby. It even won a prize, Best Film Editing for Angus Wall and Kirk Baxter, but where the hell is that Best Original Score nomination for Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross? Them winning the year before for The Social Network and then not even getting nominated for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo continues to infuriate me more than a decade later. That is one of the greatest movie scores, I believe, of the last 20 years. So yeah, in the end, Rooney Mara's win here was the nomination itself. She would be nominated again 4 years later for Carol, and here's hoping Oscar nod number 3 isn't too far off. Next up is Glenn Close for Albert Nobbs, her decades in the making film adaptation of the stage production she appeared in way back in 1982. The film tells of a woman in 19th century Ireland who poses as a man so she can work as a butler in Dublin's most elegant hotel.
They were poor, living like animals, indecently. Life without decency is unbearable.
So, Glenn Close. Glenn Close. Have I mentioned her on this channel before? I feel like I have, in something called, Glenn Close and the Elusive Oscar maybe? She had no shot at a win this time because the film Albert Nobbs just wasn't well received, and for a minute there, despite her impressive physical and emotional transformative performance, it looked like Close was going to fall short on Oscar nominations morning when her performance was passed over at both Critics' Choice and BAFTA, but she got in at SAG thankfully, and she hung on just long enough to make the final 5. Albert Nobbs also nominated for Best Makeup and Best Supporting Actress for Janet McTeer. But her narrative that kicked into high gear in 2019 for The Wife just wasn't there in 2012, Close knowing full well she was going to be staying in her seat at that Oscar ceremony, just like the woman always stays in her seat. Can someone please give this woman an Academy Award for God's sake? The third person to talk about is, hey, another of my elusive Oscar subjects, the phenomenal Michelle Williams. I would say in a different year, the category less competitive, Williams could have won the Best Actress Oscar for her performance in My Week with Marilyn. I mean, the movie checked off all the boxes. She was playing a real-life person, Marilyn Monroe, who has a fling with a young man during the production of the 1957 film The Prince and the Showgirl.
Is it true you wear nothing in bed except perfume? Darling, as I'm in England, let's say I sleep in nothing but Yardley's lavender.
She was on her third Oscar nomination in 6 years, so she was a little overdue. She won Best Actress in a Comedy or Musical at the Golden Globes, and she won Best Actress at the Film Independent Spirit Awards. She was nominated everywhere she could have been, and it was a Weinstein Company production, so yes, him again. Harvey Weinstein could have helped push Williams to an Academy Award victory, that is, if he didn't already have a big name in the Best Actress race. I think what hurt Michelle Williams in the end was that the film was looked at as a little too light, too frothy. I mean, it only got one other Oscar nomination, Best Supporting Actor for Kenneth Branagh, one of the most throwaway Academy Award nods in recent years, seriously, but Williams had proven once again her substantial talent, another 2 Oscar nods in her future, and the Academy would soon prove that they'll nominate anybody in Best Actress as long as they portray Marilyn Monroe. Okay, now it's time for the big duel, Meryl versus Viola. Let's start with Viola, who came very close to winning the Best Actress Oscar that year for her performance as Aibileen Clark in Tate Taylor's The Help, about an aspiring author who writes a book detailing the African-American maid's point of view on the white families for which they worked.
Laid him down on that sofa right there. He died right in front of me.
Davis was so brilliant in her few minutes of screen time in Doubt opposite Meryl Streep that everyone knew her second Oscar nomination was coming, and as soon as The Help took in huge box office numbers in the summer of 2011, especially for a period drama, all talk turned to a probable Academy Award nod for Davis. Octavia Spencer, you could argue, kind of runs away with the movie with her sparkling turn, but Davis gets the most dramatic moments, the emotional beats you remember, that startling monologue, that haunting final walk before the credits roll. This was a character that could have been cringy, but Davis makes her a living, breathing human being that you care deeply about throughout the entire movie. Spencer early on that award season had Best Supporting Actress in the bag. Was Davis finally going to win some prizes in the lead actress category? She was passed over at the Golden Globes, but then her momentum started heating up when she took Best Actress at Critics' Choice, and then more prominently, Best Actress at SAG, where she paid tribute to Meryl Streep.
Another beautiful face graced the screen when I was in college, and that was Meryl, who just always inspires me, but
that magnificent win and speech seemed to signify the tables were turning and that Viola Davis was going to be that year's Oscar winner. As we've come to learn, a victory at SAG helps immensely with your chances at the Academy Awards, and it didn't hurt that The Help was a box office hit and received an Oscar nomination for Best Picture. Only one woman of color had ever won Best Actress, so that helped her narrative as well. Davis looked to be the come-from-behind favorite going into Oscars night, and I had a strong feeling on February 26, 2012, she was going to win. And she would have in a landslide if Meryl Streep hadn't been in the category, going after her third Academy Award victory, like she had never come for an Oscar win before. Throughout the 2000s, Streep never really looked like she wanted another Oscar, like she always showed up to the ceremonies, but she was surprised when she won her Golden Globe for adaptation. She joked about how overrated she was when she won the Emmy for Angels in America, and she just kind of shrugged and had some fun on stage when she took the SAG Award for Doubt. She seemed to be perfectly happy year in and year out, cheering for other women who won in her category, but there was a change when it came to 2011's The Iron Lady. After 3 decades of always losing, this was finally her moment, and I think she knew it too. Streep taking on the larger-than-life role of Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher in various parts of her life, including when she's elderly with dementia. As I said near the beginning of this video, Meryl Streep was practically guaranteed a Best Actress Oscar nomination for The Iron Lady before a single scene had even been shot. But despite many problems with The Iron Lady as a movie, trust me, I have a lot of them, Streep still manages a pretty stellar performance. She completely disappears into Thatcher from the beginning with the hair, makeup, prosthetics, her voice and posture. Everything about Streep is a marvel in this movie.
And we responded, as we have responded in times past, with unity, strength, and courage.
It's as if Streep woke up one day and said, you know what, they think I'm the greatest living actress, let's give them something that lives up to that title. And she didn't let us down, even if the movie did. I mean, the big reason I would say many people doubted Streep's chances in winning the Oscar in 2012 was that The Iron Lady is just not a good movie. It's sprawling, confused, poorly paced, the scenes of older Margaret Thatcher landing with a giant thud. The scenes of Thatcher at the height of her powers are strong, but the story itself never finds much cohesion to get you to care, and so all you can really do while watching the movie is latch onto the Streep performance, which manages the heavy lifting for a screenplay that needed a few more passes through the typewriter. I also don't think Phillida Lloyd was the right choice of director. The person who directed Streep in Mamma Mia, Lloyd in The Iron Lady, always seemed like a weird fit. But despite the film receiving mixed reviews from critics and not doing well at the box office, nobody was going to doubt Meryl Streep doing very well in award season for this powerhouse role. It all started at the Golden Globes in January when Streep won Best Actress in a Motion Picture Drama. This is another one of her fun speeches. I love the beginning when she realizes she needs her glasses.
Oh, shit!
Oh, my glasses. Oh, I'm going to have to remember my speech.
But let's face it, there is a part of the speech that hits differently now.
I just want to thank my agent, Kevin Uvain, and God, Harvey Weinstein. The Punisher. Old Testament, I guess.
Was Streep going to steamroll the season? As I mentioned before, she lost to Viola Davis at Critics' Choice and SAG, so the Oscar winner was anyone's guess. Something that did help Streep toward the end was her win for Best Actress at BAFTA, where she once again had a charming start to accepting her trophy, needing Colin Firth to retrieve her shoe. It was indeed Firth who presented the Best Actress Oscar as well. Was he going to say Viola or Meryl? He said Meryl, of course. Oh my god, no matter how much I was quietly rooting for Davis that night, I still leapt out of my seat and cheered for Streep, one of my 3 favorite actresses, who finally got her 3rd Oscar win after 29 years. So how did Streep do it? How did she defeat Viola Davis for the Best Actress Academy Award? Here are the 7 main reasons. The first and most important reason, I would argue, was the overdue factor that had been hanging over Streep that season. Despite the fact she already had won 2 Oscars, still, she had won her gold trophies in 1980 and 1983, a long time ago. As I said before, she had 12 Oscar losses in between, and it was time. The Academy obviously loves her, nominating her over and over again throughout the decades, and it was starting to look ridiculous and downright cruel, honestly, for her to keep losing forever and ever. She got close to a win 3 years prior for Doubt. She was in 2nd place 2 years prior for Julie and Julia. The timing felt right with The Iron Lady. If they weren't going to reward her for that performance, then win. The second reason was Streep playing a real-life person in a biographical drama, and not just any person, Margaret Thatcher, someone most everybody had a picture of in their head and had an opinion about, good or bad. The Academy loves giving actors gold trophies for playing real people. Think Renee Zellweger for Judy, think Jessica Chastain for The Eyes of Tammy Faye. And Streep had this weapon in her bag of tricks up against her main competition, Viola Davis, who was playing a fictional character in The Help. It might seem like a tiny factor, but I believe if Davis had played a real person in The Help, and Streep had played a fictional character in The Iron Lady, then Davis would have won in a landslide. However, Streep not only portraying Margaret Thatcher to the best of her ability, but also being made up with prosthetics to look as closely like her as possible, helped her Academy Award victory big time.
When they called my name, I had this feeling I could hear half of America going, oh no. Oh, come on, why? Her. Again, you know? But whatever.
Third, yes, here he comes again, like a slasher movie killer who can never stay down, Harvey Weinstein. The Iron Lady, like The Artist and My Week with Marilyn, had behind-the-scenes help from Weinstein in those weeks leading up to the Oscars, and don't think for 1 second his influence didn't give Streep that final push to her gold trophy win. I remember reading reports around that time that Streep actively campaigned for The Iron Lady more so than her other movies, appearing at Academy screenings and benefits. She got out there, was making the rounds, she wanted that Oscar win, and Weinstein, I'm sure, was coordinating much of that campaign behind the scenes. Fourth, I would say, were her wins at the Golden Globes and BAFTA. She could afford losses at Critics' Choice and SAG, but she needed those other 2 victories to stay afloat. If she had lost BAFTA, let's say, to Viola Davis, I do believe then and there, the race for Best Actress would have been over. The momentum was in Davis's favor after SAG, but then the focus shifted back to Streep after BAFTA, right around the time of final Oscar voting. I'm sure lots of Academy members who didn't care for the Iron Lady still gave their vote to Streep because she had won enough prizes throughout the season to say once and for all, please give me that third Academy Award. Again, the SAG loss hurt, but as it turned out, it wasn't detrimental to her campaign. Golden Globes and BAFTA were enough.
All 300 beautiful actors and crew that worked on this wonderful film. Thank you very, very much. I'm so grateful.
The fifth reason Meryl Streep won the Oscar for The Iron Lady was the film's perfectly timed release date, opening in limited release the last week of December and then going wider in January. It kept the film and Streep's performance fresh in everyone's minds throughout award season, while The Help had come out way back in August and might not have been on every voter's mind in January and February of 2012. If this had been flipped, then Davis probably wins the Oscar. The Iron Lady in August and The Help in December? Oh yeah, Streep loses. I'm almost 100%. The foul stench of The Iron Lady wasn't all-encompassing yet after only being in theaters for a few weeks, but if Academy members had been given 6 months to consider everything wrong with that movie, they probably would have voted for Davis or Williams instead. The Iron Lady being the last major movie released in 2011 helped give Streep the Academy Award victory. The sixth reason was the Iron Lady winning the Oscar for Best Makeup earlier in the telecast. I did think the Iron Lady underperforming in its number of Academy Award nods, with just 2, nothing in picture, director, screenplay, etc., did hurt Streep's chances, but that win for Best Makeup for Mark Coulier and her longtime makeup artist J. Roy Helland showed that the Iron Lady had more strength going into the Oscar ceremony than we expected. As we saw just this year with Brendan Fraser and The Whale, a win in makeup is a clear indicator as to who's going to win the big acting trophy, and such was the case back in 2012. The Academy could have given the makeup award to Albert Nobbs or Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, a film, by the way, which should have earned the late great Alan Rickman an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor, but they went with the Iron Lady instead, which also helped Streep to a major extent.
Thanks, Meryl, for keeping me employed for the last 37 years. Your brilliance makes my work look good no matter what.
And the seventh and final reason Meryl Streep beat Viola Davis was the sheer power of her dramatic turn as the bigger-than-life Margaret Thatcher. Streep could be ignored at the Oscars over and over again, but enough Academy voters decided after many decades that they couldn't ignore this acting legend any longer. And so it was Streep's name Colin Firth called at the 84th Academy Awards for Best Actress. She gave her Doubt co-star a warm embrace, and then on that stage as an Oscar winner for the first time in 29 years, she gave one of my favorite speeches ever. I love what she said about her husband, Don Gummer, her eyes filling up with tears.
First, I'm going to thank Don, because when you thank your husband at the end of the speech, they play him out with the music, and I want him to know that everything I value most in our lives, you've given me.
And I adore the kind words she said about all the people she's worked with throughout the years.
The thing that counts the most with me is the friendships and the love and the sheer joy we have shared making movies together. My friends, thank you, all of you, departed and here, for this, inexplicably wonderful career. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Many thought Meryl Streep's third Academy Award victory was going to finally put a stop to the constant nominations, but in the 6 years that followed, she was nominated another 4 times, her 21st and to date final Oscar nod being for The Post in 2018, and Viola Davis has been nominated 2 more times, for Fences in 2017 and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom in 2021. She of course won for Fences in the Best Supporting Actress category and embraced Streep before walking up to the stage. I'd be really curious to know 11 years on what Meryl Streep thinks of her Oscar victory for The Iron Lady. I mean, I think most people agree it hasn't aged very well, especially considering her win for Sophie's Choice, which I named recently the best acting Oscar win of all time. Would she have rather taken the gold trophy for Doubt or Julie and Julia? Or does she even care? She probably doesn't care, honestly. Probably hasn't thought twice about it since that night in February 2012. Viola Davis, interestingly, has said in recent years that she regrets making The Help, If she had won the Academy Award for that performance, would she still feel the same way? I don't know about you, but I would love a sit-down of Davis and Streep reminiscing about their many famous roles and about this suspenseful Best Actress race at the 84th Academy Awards. Like, wouldn't that be fascinating? It'll probably never happen, but we did recently get the next best thing when Streep in April of this year honored Davis in New York City as a recipient of the 48th Chaplin Award. Most of what Streep talks about is their work together in Doubt, but what you feel the most is her monumental respect for Davis.
I'm so glad I know you and I was there when you launched into Hollywood and changed it. Man, you changed it. So respect. Love you.
In 2012, they may have been so-called Best Actress Oscar rivals, but in the long run, ultimately, they are friends, collaborators, two of the finest actors we will ever have the privilege of watching in the movies. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. And let me know in the comments below who was your choice for the Best Actress Oscar in 2012. Was Streep the right choice, or would you have preferred Davis take this one? We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.